almost everyone else on planet Earth. It's going to affect you big time, and you can either fight against it or you can just get on board with it. If it's easy to do, eventually everybody will be doing the same set of best practices. You'll be very far behind if you're not doing it, but doing it won't put you any further ahead. Competitive advantage will come from doing the actual systems engineering. This idea of human AI teaming, I think that's completely misguided. I don't see any world for the long foreseeable future where AI is completely better than humans. The tool is not a capability. There's a lot that goes into creating a capability that goes way beyond the adoption of a specific tool. ChatGPT is not going to do financial forecasting. That's the core problem you're trying to solve.
This is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast, where we are here to educate, equip, and inspire people to build extraordinary companies. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. Now, let's get it started. Welcome to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. My name is Rick Meekins. I'm your host as usual. And in our studio today, we have Jacob Andra. How are you today, sir?
Doing great, Rick. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm obviously excited. Glad to have you here, man.
How many cups of coffee have you drunk this morning?
You know what? I had just one, but it was a good one. Cool, man. Let's do this. Before we get started, if you haven't done it already, I would be honored if you'd like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. And let's get it started. So, Jacob, you're in the AI space. This is new. This is upcoming. You've been at it for a long time now, but I think it'd be a great idea to help our audience understand a little bit about you, who you are, why you do, and what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Happy to introduce myself. So yes, my name is Jacob Andra. I am the CEO and co-founder of Talbot West. We are a AI enablement partner. So what we do is we help organizations understand the different AI capabilities, map those to pain points or opportunities within the organization, and string together the right data sources, workflows, and integrations so that these actually work. Instead of treating AI as just a point solution, like a tool that you subscribe to, embedding it in so it actually can be impactful in real world workflows and create real value for organizations. So that's in a nutshell what we're all about.
How did you get into this work and why?
So I come from an entrepreneurial background. Grew up helping my dad build a company, manufacturing company. Have launched multiple companies myself, and my latest was a marketing agency where I was integrating various types of technologies, including some AI, into a lot of the workflows and processes of that marketing agency. My good friend Steve Carfiat, who has a like 2 decade background in Oracle, ended up running their developer innovations team. He watched me from the sidelines, being an adopter of all these technologies, convinced me that I should start a consultancy helping other companies. And then I convinced him to come join me. So he brings the deep technical integration systems engineering expertise. I'm very good at mapping processes and workflows, knowing what capabilities map to what needs and that sort of thing. So between the two of us, we're very well rounded, great team of experts across different domains also in our company.
Very cool. Very cool. AI is it's evolving so quickly. There's, every other day, some other software is adding AI to what they're doing, or there's a new tool coming out. How do you help people, or what do you recommend to people when they're looking at different potential solutions, we get shiny object syndrome. Stuff is there like every day. What do we do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would treat it as identify what it is you're trying to do in your company. So start with either the problem you're trying to solve or the capability you're trying to create. Why are you inquiring about AI to begin with? So get really clear about that. If it's just that, oh, I'm afraid of falling behind, that's not really a super valid reason. You should really get clear on and talk to an expert if you're not clear, like, what can it actually do for my company? And AI is not one thing. There are large language models, there are data analytics, predictive forecasting, all kinds of capabilities out there, pattern recognition, the AI behind your Spotify playlist recommendations, the AI behind a self-driving car. There's a vast range of different capabilities within the AI spectrum. So first of all, get clear on what are the opportunities for your business, the bottlenecks it could potentially remove. And then from there, just start approaching it like the complex system that your company is. Your company is fairly complex. You have a lot of different systems, processes, workflows, data sets, that sort of thing that have to all be orchestrated together. It's not going to be just as simple as I'm going to get a subscription and my problems are going to be solved unless, I mean, if the problem you're trying to solve is I need help writing an email, then sure, that's a bit easier, but most business problems are a lot deeper than that. And because you were on my podcast and sharing how you've orchestrated some of these workflows around scheduling a podcast, and it's not just one solution where you push a button and it solves your problem for you. You're stringing together multiple integrations and workflows. So, most business processes are much more complex than even the one you described. But you get the picture there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. What was interesting is, as part of my process even is AI was the enabler that we expected it to be. And because of AI, we could do what we can do. And so, what comes to mind for me is like when these ads come across or, whatever it is, there's suddenly new opportunity, new ideas that we hadn't thought about before. And as entrepreneurs, I mean, it's just like, it's sparking something new. It's like, hey, suddenly I can, ABC, XYZ. I mean, how do you so with that, I think almost like, I don't know, re-engineering processes or even going at it with, almost like a business plan or a product launch. What is your process or what do you recommend to folks?
Yeah, you touched on something interesting there, which is that as technologies advance and new capabilities come out, that does broaden the scope of what's possible. And so there is this interesting interplay between this specific type of workflow or process wasn't possible before, but now that these AI different capabilities have accelerated, now there's suddenly an opportunity that I can map that to some opportunities within my company. But our entire process is just through discovery and understanding. There is no solution out there that is a one size fits all for every business need, where if only every company under the sun would just subscribe to this software, their problems would be solved. That's not the way the real world works. So we start with a deep understanding of business needs and opportunities, both the ones that the business owner or executive is aware of, and maybe a lot of the ones they may not even be aware of. We can help highlight or, ask some probing questions to feel out. Maybe there's opportunities they're not even aware of that the new capabilities can bring to bear, and we'll surface those. But it really does come from mapping those and having a deep understanding of a specific organization and what's going on there.
And what I'm hearing, what I'm understanding, and maybe you can validate or deny this for me is there's a lot of conversation that's going on around how if you're not doing AI right now, you're already behind. If you don't jump into it, you're just going to be out there. You're not going to survive, as an organization. And so my suspicion is that the leaderships are hearing that piece of the conversation and they would and just invite someone in like yourself to say, hey, what can we do? How can we streamline? How, what opportunities are there that, we haven't even taken into consideration? Is that kind of what you're seeing?
Absolutely. And there's a fundamental misunderstanding about what it means to even do AI, if we can use that term. And we hear from a lot of companies like, oh, we've got a Copilot license for all our team members. So we've checked that box, or, we've got a ChatGPT subscription. And it's like, well, no, that's not really it. I mean, that's great. You're going to get some value from that. There are some easy, low hanging fruit tasks you can definitely leverage for that. So we're not going to say you shouldn't have done that. That's great that you did that, but that's not, doing AI. That's not integrating your core systems, processes, and workflows. A tool is not a capability. First of all, that standalone tool is not integrated with your core data sources. That doesn't involve change management. There's a lot that goes into creating a capability that goes way beyond the adoption of a specific tool. And second of all, like, there are a lot of different capabilities out there, as I alluded before. So ChatGPT is not going to do financial forecasting with any degree of accuracy if that's the core problem you're trying to solve. You're just applying the wrong capability to that specific use case. So, yeah, getting a lot more nuanced and detailed than just subscribing to this or that platform.
So, I mean, let's start, I guess, at the at that level, with the Chat GPT, Copilot, et cetera, et cetera. What may give us a clear understanding of expectation versus reality? We get the license, we start using it, et cetera, et cetera. We have certain expectations, we have certain beliefs about what it can and cannot do, but reality may not look like that. What have you seen?
Well, let me start with a mental model I like to educate executives on, and that's the onion metaphor, which is on the outside of the onion, it's your rapid adoption for individual tasks and workflows. And so as you go through the layers of the onion toward the core, you're actually talking about engineering capabilities, integrating systems with each other, doing the more hard work, right? Like doing the core work of actually making your company at its core, how it functions at its core, much more intelligent and effective. Usually that's a longer, more drawn out process. And so, yes, absolutely, you want to be capitalizing on those outside of the onion capabilities where an individual person can fire up a tool and suddenly get more efficient at some individual workflow they're doing. That's great. And so we can talk about that. But I just wanted to say, like, that's only the beginning of true AI integration into your company. And if you want to act, and the other point to be made is those outside of the onion capabilities will be table stakes. If it's easy to do, eventually everybody will be doing the same set of best practices. It'll become industry standard. You'll be very far behind if you're not doing it, but doing it won't put you any further ahead. Competitive advantage will come from doing the actual systems engineering hard work that creates actual, like, real competitive advantage. So to put that aside for a moment, let's now talk about the easy wins you can get from the outside of the onion, individual workflows that can be optimized with a tool like ChatGPT. And of course, you're talking anything to do with knowledge management, ingesting complex information, summarizing it, understanding it, outputting different types of information. So I'll give you a prime example where we have an engineering client that needed to respond to a lot of RFPs, and they needed to intake a large quantity of documentation, read it all, understand what the RFP, the scope of this project actually was, make sure there weren't contradictions, and there usually were. So one document might describe the project in one way and another might actually directly contradict it, right? And it took about 3 days on average just for them to understand and get the full scope of a project before they even responded to it. And I showed them how you can create a custom GPT, which, for anyone listening, if you don't know what that is, it's a capability ChatGPT allows where you can give kind of like some custom context. It's like having your own little private instance of ChatGPT that has more context around the specific task you're trying to do. Very great capability. And I showed them how to do that and program it that, your job is to look at all these materials when you're given a body of materials and identify the scope, identify any internal contradictions, then output a report in this format. And this is the information we want you to output. If there are any gaps or missing information, you know, clearly state what those are. Never fabricate. If there's something you're not sure of, clearly state what you're not sure of, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So that's kind of the instructions. And then so they were just blown away, right? Like they could throw all of these documents into this custom GPT, and what took them 3 days, it would spit out a clear scope of work. Here is the defined scope. Here's where this document disagrees with that one. You need to probably contact them and work this out, ask them some clarifying questions, et cetera, et cetera. And they were just like overjoyed at how much time this was saving them. And so that's a great use case outside of the onion, doesn't really need to be integrated with anything else, can create immediate value. And there are going to be a lot of those in companies. And again, they're going to be quickly adopted once people realize, and that'll be, again, just the industry standard.
What do people believe versus what he is?
In terms of, believing in capabilities that,
Capabilities. So, for example, you have the RFP. Well, I was working on something the other day. I mean, I plugged a bunch of documents into the GPT I had created, and I asked the question. It was okay. Looking at this information, what is it? What do I forget exactly or summarize? What information I need to have for this meeting that's upcoming. It gave me a summary, but I realized that it only summarized like one of the documents, and I said, I need you to go through all the documents before you give me the summary. And it came back, it was like, I'm sorry, I, just used the first document. And, I assume that was, and this isn't something that, comes in the instruction manual, so to speak. So, I mean, how do people work with that? What is that expectation that we should have as users?
yeah, that's a key portion of the using these effectively is actually really understanding their strengths and weaknesses where they fall down on the job. And so, in ChatGPT, Claude, and other tools these days, it actually allows you to follow their thought process. It actually kind of audits the chain of thought and what they're doing as they go, and you can look at that. And so that's a core part of the training we do with our clients is actually follow which documents it's reading. And if you can see that it's taking these shortcuts or not reading all the documents, you can say, hey, you didn't actually follow your core instructions. Go back and do this. But under no circumstances, especially dealing with like higher stakes situations where the cost of, bungling it or having the wrong information is going to be pretty high. In the case of an RFP, you won't get the project, right? So you could classify that as maybe like medium level, but there are use cases where the cost is going to be really high, reputational harm or whatever. Yeah, absolutely do not trust implicitly anything they output. Use it as a kind of cognitive, I like to call it like an exoskeleton, just enables you to process information much faster, but in the end, you are the one responsible for verifying and following along what it's doing, how it's doing it, whether the output is accurate or not, and all of that, and checking it and all that. So under no circumstances should you just delegate your cognitive abilities to this tool.
100%. Use your brain. Absolutely. So we're at that level. So what is that next level? I love the analogy of the onion. What's that level below that? We're not the I guess the end user, so to speak.
hmm Um, yeah, so if you're thinking from like the point of view of a business executive, the next level down would be, I mean, it can look different for different companies. So I don't want to say like it's the exact same type of implementation, but it could be starting to give a large language model access to in a secure way, right? Depending on what your internal data is and the security requirements, you might need a private instance, but starting to give it access to more of your own proprietary systems and information so that now when you're interacting with it, instead of just being a generic chat GPT that has access to all knowledge on the internet, it's very much trained on your internal systems, processes, data, or whatever. So that could be like a step deeper into the onion, one of many potential steps deeper into the onion. And then, when you start getting toward the core, you're talking about starting to get all of your systems and processes able to communicate with each other, where information and work can flow a lot more seamlessly without the degree of silos and stovepipes that we see today in companies.
Sure. Going back to creating a custom large language model, do you have an example of that? You can kind of walk us through, what that would look like.
Yeah, well, you're not creating, I mean, obviously creating the large language models is, a billions of dollars endeavor, but you're talking about taking the foundational technology that a company like Anthropic or OpenAI has already built, but then kind of retraining is not the right word, but kind of taking that foundational capability and saying, okay, now your job is to be an expert on this body of information. And I'll give you an example from another client. They have to go out and do like field testing of soil and water samples and test a bunch of stuff. And they have this large body of technical manuals, like we're talking thousands of technical manuals on all these different substances and different processes and procedures and different like gradient levels of contamination, right? And so they have to refer to those when they're in the field. And obviously, it takes them a long time to open up whatever I think they're on, like SharePoint or something, and go through that, try to do keyword searches and find the right manual when they're in the field dealing with a very specific situation. So, we just took a core large language model, said, now your job is specifically to be an expert on soil and water contamination, processes, procedures, SOPs, and standards. Here's your body of information. Don't worry about all the information humanity has ever created. Your job is not to be an expert on all that, it's to be an expert on this specific, unique body of information. Here are the manuals. When you're asked a question, you go specifically to these manuals to find the answer. And then you also show the user which specific document you got that answer from so they can verify they're getting the correct information. And that, of course, shortened the research time tremendously.
I can imagine you just going in and asking a question versus just having to do all that research. Is that the same thing that they're using here? Law firms are using something like that. Are they using like a collective body, or is it they have their own individual large language models in a firm, or how does that work typically? Or do you know?
Yeah, within law firms, yeah, I'm pretty familiar with a lot of this legal tech stuff, and we're working with different law firms on some different internal capabilities. But so there are a lot of different use cases there, right? You have case law research, so you have now products that are specific. You ask it a question, and it has access to a database of all these case law files, and it can go and crawl through and pull it's very much like what I just described with technical manuals, only it's looking for case law precedent, and it's bringing that precedent and responding in that way. So that's one type of capability. Another type of capability could be a law firm actually creates their own unique to their firm repository of their approach, their processes and procedures, their standard operating procedures, and then they train a large language model on that and say, when I ask you a question, you pull from this body of information, right? So there are a lot of ways you can point at, a lot of different uses for it.
Mm, mm, interesting. Where does a product like Riverside, fall into this? I mean, this is a software platform, and we're able to record, we're able to edit. It helps with the editing process, et cetera, et cetera. Is that more their process that they've created an AI assisted process? Is that kind of that third level that you were talking about?
Yeah, what you're going to see is all kinds of specialized SaaS offerings like Riverside that have AI embedded in them. And they're pretty useful because what they do is they take a specific set of capabilities, a specific use case. There's a box around it, right? It's very defined. They're not trying to do RFP response. They're not trying to do all they're doing is one specific thing, which is we're going to streamline the podcasting process. We're going to give you a platform to record, and then some AI capabilities are going to speed up some of the editing process, some of the publishing process, etc. We have some integrations, right? And so that's great, right? Like it's way more efficient than the whatever came before it for recording podcasts. Or from the perspective of a company trying to increase their own internal capabilities, it's like, yeah, that's great, but now how do we connect that boxed off set of capabilities Riverside has created to something else we need to do where those need to actually integrate with each other? And you've done that through I believe you said you use Zapier, but there are other middleware capabilities. But within companies, you can even sometimes do direct integrations via API, right? And so it's like, great, there's Riverside. There might be a bunch of different offerings for different, areas of capability you need. And you might need to sort of string some of those together to create now an enhanced workflow across and between what each platform alone can provide.
So what's interesting is, or I guess what I'm thinking about is, we do use, several different platforms, and we do, have some AI tools. The problem that we run into is, there's certainly a knowledge gap. This is, AI is not, our area. We can do process all that, but AI is not necessarily our area. So if I were to say, hey, Jacob, you know what, we need help. We need to streamline this. This needs to work better. I believe that there are capabilities that we're not taking advantage of, that can, further, help us to be more efficient. How would you approach that?
Yeah, I would just have a conversation with you and understand what you're trying to achieve, what your priorities and goals are, and then just a pragmatic assessment with current technology today. What is it going to take to achieve those goals? And that might be within budget for you, and that might be out of budget for you. It's like, whoa, I'm too small of an operation to invest that much in that, so I'm going to wait. And as technology advances, maybe in the future it'll cost less, but we're just going to be very, very realistic about here's the actual feasibility of accomplishing this thing you want. And uh, here are the different pathways, and often there are trade-offs between different pathways. It's like, okay, you could take pathway A, but you're only going to get about 70% of this specific area you want to optimize for. Whereas if you take pathway B, you're going to get about 90%, but it's going to cost you, 30% more, right? So often there are different ways of approaching the same goal, but you have trade-offs between cost, level of actual capability, and a bunch of other factors. And so we'll just lay it all out for you, and you can make your choice there. And if you need our help to do it, that's fine. We can help. If you want to do it yourself, that's also fine. We're very flexible in the way we engage.
Awesome. Awesome. Excellent. So you talked about a deeper, one of the things that you talked about was, or what I heard, maybe I heard this right, maybe I didn't, but I was thinking about the connected systems and being able to, if I understood correctly, again, just take that data, from all over the organization, be able to use it in order to make, business decisions. Can you can you describe that much better than I did, first of all? And what business, how companies are benefiting, from from this approach.
Yeah, so when you're talking about working with large data sets, there's a lot to say there. First of all, there's a lot around how you're storing your data, doing data security, accessing your data, integrating your data, different data sets together. So if you have data set A, it might have one set of information, data set B has a totally different set. You put them together, suddenly you can create this, like you can triangulate different data sets to pull out even more insights. And so then how are you integrating those, right? And then leveraging the right AI or machine learning capabilities to really extract what you need from those data sets. And often that is not done through a large language model. Now the large language models are getting better and better. And so you can get part of the way there depending on what you're trying to do with some of these advanced large language models. But really, if you're talking massive data sets, you're trying to do very advanced pattern recognition, forecasting, predictive analytics, that sort of thing. You're going to use a very different tool. For example, Talbot West, my company, has just announced a partnership with Lucidity Sciences. They have invented a totally new algorithmic approach to data analysis. And on some of the industry benchmarks, like one very famous benchmark called Tab Arena, which is run by AWS, Amazon Web Services, they outperformed all the other machine learning models. And what the test was is a massive data set around homeowners who have taken out home equity lines of credit, HELOCs, on their homes. And it was trying to predict who would default and who wouldn't. And so, very, very large data set. You wouldn't even try to approach this. You wouldn't even try to touch this with a large language model. And so these machine learning models are much faster and leaner and better at analyzing large amounts of data. The model that Lucidity Sciences developed, they call it LumaWarp. It was faster than the fastest models, but the fastest competitor models were not very accurate, and it was more accurate than the most accurate model, which is so slow it takes like 300 hours just to train on a data set using a massive compute cluster. So LumaWarp was more accurate than that, but took like an hour to train instead of 300 hours and trained on a laptop. So it's lightweight, fast, accurate, crunches through mountains of data, does things that you would never even expect a large language model to do, and has applicability across all kinds of things: financial forecasting, prediction, medical diagnosis. I mean, we could talk through like tons of different industries. What I'm excited about that partnership, the reason I'm so excited about that partnership is that, that model doesn't speak human language. It's not as easy for a company to just get that up and running. It needs a lot of integration. There, you can actually pair it with a large language model so that there's a layer of the LumaWarp data analysis, but with a large language model as a translation layer to pass information to and from a human operator, right? And all that requires a lot of orchestration, a lot of systems engineering and integration. And so, we can make that capability available to companies that want that level of advanced data analysis that a large language model could never do. So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, there are just so many capabilities out there when it comes to data, and it needs to be well architected.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. You mentioned like the healthcare diagnosis. That's something I heard something about. I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. The idea of having the bot, whatever, able to look at the entire history. My entire history. I guess down to DNA level or whatever, and help to predict. Is that realistic? Do you know where they are in all of that?
I mean, yeah, there's so much happening in healthcare across. I mean, even healthcare itself is like a vast array of subdisciplines and innovations happening. I do know there's a lot happening there. I'm not exactly at the forefront. I do know that some of these advanced data analytics capabilities, like the one I just mentioned with LumaWarp, have tremendous applicability there, and that there's tons of great work being done.
Yeah, that's exciting. Hopefully, hopefully that'll change a lot for a lot of people. I mean, with there's so much happening in the world, it just gets. I don't know. Do you really see AI, making the world better? As a general statement?
I mean, I think AI is going to have a lot of unintended negative consequences, even as it has a lot of positive consequences. And you could compare it to the automobile, right? Like we have car accidents, we have exhaust pollution, but we also no longer have our streets crowded with horses pooping everywhere. So, and we get where we want to go faster, right? So, is the car a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, who's to say, right? So I think with AI, you're going to see very similar. It's neither good nor bad. It just is. It's happening. Nobody's going to put the cat back in the bag, and it's gonna revolutionize a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it feels. I mean, it feels like it could really be, net positive. I mean, I would say that automobiles are net positive. I would hate to, you know, I hate having to walk, a couple of miles to do something. In addition to that, I don't have to feed my horse, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I don't know if they had Uber horses back then, but it's interesting, like being in this revolution, and you don't quite know. I mean, AI can, we don't talk about it probably as much as we once did, but I mean, I imagine AI is continuing to advance, at
Absolutely.
a very quick rate. So I mean, it's going to be wrapped into everything that we're doing. I mean, I got my Alexa is now, the Alexa 2.0, and I have a conversation, and it's nosy sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I
What
mean,
are you
you're
most excited about in AI coming up?
Yeah, I'm excited about the fact that humans won't have to do as much of the cognitive grunt work and that we can do more of what we're uniquely qualified for. Because I do believe that AI is nowhere close to even approaching human capabilities for a lot of the higher level cognitive stuff that we are uniquely suited for. But that paired with AI, we're going to be actually way better. This idea of human AI teaming, a lot of the discourse is around AI replace humans. I think that's completely misguided. I don't see any world for the long foreseeable future where AI is completely better than humans across every aspect in every field. Human intelligence is an amazing, complex thing that, even science is only beginning to crack the system of it. It evolved over millions of years, and, AI, as amazing as it is and as great as it is, isn't going to replace us, but it can certainly be this amazing exoskeleton that takes us to new heights. So that's the kind of positive vision I look at.
I like that. I like that. What do you say to folks? I mean, there's a we always talk about change management in terms of businesses. We go into a company, we're gonna, change processes, tools, whatever that's gonna be. Because of the way AI has exploded, I mean, we're looking at, almost a change management, on the human level, on the existence level. What do you say to folks that are having trouble really understanding? I mean, there's a lot, and I would add to that, I think there's a lot of misinformation, out there as well that may be confusing people. I'm thinking of my dad, who's like he loves technology, but he's in a place where he's having trouble with just understanding. So, I mean, what do you say to folks? How do people begin to kind of ease into the river, so to speak, so they can?
Yeah, I mean, just don't fight it. Like this is the new reality, and with very few exceptions, it's going to change everything for everybody. I mean, your rare exception might be if you're just a crafts person that makes handmade crafts and sells them at your local farmers market, and you make all the money you want from word of mouth, and you literally have no plans to expand. I mean, something like that. Like, yeah, it's probably not going to, but that's pretty rare for a person to be in a situation like that. Almost everyone else on planet Earth, it's gonna affect you big time, and you can either fight against it and be afraid of change, or you can just get on board with it. Look at how much the internet changed the way most businesses operated, and the businesses that were afraid and slow to adopt just got left behind. You don't want to be in that boat. So take it as like a chance to just up your game, learn something new, exercise that cognitive flexibility we all know is so healthy, and just, get with the times.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Is there or do you recommend like taking a course, or do you think I don't know, just grabbing something and just starting to work with it and explore it? What do you think?
I mean, yeah, there's so many courses. It's really hard to keep up with like what are the good courses. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is just start using one of these large language models. I like Claude the most. Gemini is pretty good. ChatGPT is okay. And you can literally use it as a conversational partner and ask it like, hey, I'm in this industry. This is what I do with my day. What is the AI revolution going to change about my industry, about my job? How can I be ahead of it? And what are the specific capabilities and skill sets that will help me adapt? And it'll actually like have a conversation with you. You can put it on voice mode and go for a walk and have a long conversation as you're going for a walk. And I'm not saying like everything it says is going to be spot on, but it'll start giving you some really good ideas. Then you exercise your human capability to be strategic and to see what's true and what's relevant. And then you can guide the conversation that way. Like, let's say it tells you this output and you think that a certain thing it said was spot on and a bunch of the rest of it was not super dialed into what you need to know. Well, you narrow in on that one thing and you say, hey, let's go deeper into this. Let's talk more about this. So you're guiding the conversation, right? I'm not saying you just turn your brain off and, Chat GPT, tell me what to do. That's not the approach, but like you're taking responsibility to educate yourself and guide the conversation. And based on its feedback to you, it will surface things you weren't aware of, and things that are highly relevant. And then you'll know, like, oh, I want to steer the conversation in this way. I want to explore this avenue. And that's a great way to get started.
I think one of the other things that people may be concerned about is the security though. It's like you're doing whatever it is that you're doing. What is the reality of security with these different platforms?
Yeah, so a lot of these platforms have, on a like beginner level, beginner individual level, a lot of times they are using your responses to train their models. And then if you do a more advanced level, they have an opt out, like don't use my information to train, but your stuff is still going to the cloud and being stored somewhere. But guess what? So is it if you're using SharePoint, Google Drive, Riverside, or any of these cloud based tools, right? So we live in a cloud based society where almost everything we do online is stored in someone's commercial cloud, and you are trusting them to safeguard your information, and leaks do happen. So this is not just specifically an AI problem. This is a trusting large technology providers to keep my information safe problem. Now, AI does create some kind of newer, unique challenges around the incentives of using your information to train. But if they're guaranteeing, they won't, then they're the ones commercially liable if you can ever, if it ever comes out that they were, right? That's on them. But each organization, each person has to make their own peace with all this. Now there are options of spinning up your own versions of these. We talked a little bit about this, but you can do it in your own environment on like AWS or Microsoft Azure. You're talking a little more effort, expense, a heavier technical lift, but you have your own private enclosed model that's literally not sharing information with anyone. And you can even have it not cloud based at all. You can have it running just locally on your own computer or your own private device where it's not connected to the internet at all. I mean, there are all kinds of options depending on your security needs. For the average person, that's way overkill, but we do stuff with defense and all kinds of things where there are very stringent security requirements. So there is a solution for every use case or every level of security requirement. Just some of them are a lot more technically and resource intensive.
Mhm, mm. Makes sense. Did I hear that there are open source tools that people can use to make large language models?
Absolutely. There are open source large language models.
Wow, wow. How does one find one?
Yeah, just do an internet search. I mean, Olama is one, Quinn 2.0. Quinn has a family of language models. Yeah, I can follow up if you want to put a. I can follow up with like a list of these open source ones. And again, for somebody to deploy the open source ones, they have to be a little more sometimes technically savvy on how to configure them and that sort of thing.
Well, that'd be amazing. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, yeah, I'll follow up. You can put that in the show notes.
I'll do that. I'll do that. Thank you. I was going this direction with security. One of the other things I've seen is like where I think it was OpenAI in particular talked about business security at a different level than just opting out of being used for training. Is that what is that? What does that mean? What are they referring to?
Yeah, so just the surface area of your information and how it's being exposed out there. So it's beyond just using the model to train. It's like where is it being stored? How is it being stored? What are the integrations with that? With most commercial cloud-based software tools these days, they're handling all those in the background and the average person doesn't even really know what those are, but they're of a sufficient robustness that leaks don't happen that often. Anytime you're kind of configuring your own stuff is where you have to have a lot more expertise in those things.
Awesome. Last question for you. So I want you to help our audience really understand more of a big picture approach to AI. A lot of folks, most folks perhaps are using ChatGPT and maybe dabbling in some other areas, but the importance, I think, and you've kind of alluded to, is that, we need to continue to evolve, our organizations.
Yeah, I think it would be just a kind of recap of what I said earlier, which is you got to start thinking in terms of organizational intelligence. That you stop thinking like silos, individual people, individual workflows that are all separate from each other, and start thinking about your organization getting more intelligent, more integrated, more efficient. And the kind of North Star vision of the future, I'm going to use an analogy from like imagine a sci-fi movie where the spaceship has an onboard computer and that computer can report on like, you know, life support systems in base 6 are down or engine 3 is running at 70%, right? How does that computer know that? Well, because it's actually integrated and people kind of take it for granted in a sci-fi setting, but like that's no small feat to have a single onboard computer that has visibility and awareness of all the different systems on that computer. So now you bring that into a company that is the company of the future. How long will it take us to get there? I'm not sure, but even starting to now think in those terms, how can your company even take small steps to be a little bit more integrated and systems aware of each other and AI embedded within core systems? It's going to be a massive competitive advantage. So stop thinking in terms of isolated capabilities, start thinking in terms of organizational intelligence.
Excellent. If someone wants to get in touch with you, has questions, wants to learn more about your company, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so my website is my company website, talbotwest.com, and I am Jacob at talbotwest.com. That's my email. Feel free to email me with any inquiries.
Awesome. Jacob, thank you so much. Loved it. My brain is like, on fire now, so that's a good thing. And folks, thank you so much for watching and listening to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. We'll catch you next time.